All right, so I have us on record and I'm just confirming the live stream. So I'll just be one more second. Okay, 5 seconds. Okay, folks, we are good to go. We are live streaming. Have a great meeting. I am here if you need me.
All right, thank you very much, Brandy, and welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us. We don't have a really tough agenda this morning, so we'll move our way through it. I guess the very first thing on the agenda is the absentee landlord licensing situation, and I can bring you up to date on that. As of Monday night, council did not approve the licensing scheme, and instead asked staff to come back with a intake form for the budget that would include something like 4 or 5 enforcement officers who would focus on property standards matters throughout the city. I think there were a couple of things that drove that decision, and that was, first of all, that it would apply across the city. There was some concern that the rollout or the pilot was only for part of the city. And I think the second part was that it affected both good landlords and bad landlords. And both of those are true. I'm hopeful that the new regime will be effective, and I'm hoping that we will see improvements in our neighborhoods as a result of increased enforcement. I would have preferred myself a scheme that would encourage compliance rather than enforcement, but you know, let's see where this goes, and let's hope that we see some improvements in all of our neighborhoods. Let's be frank. So that's where that stands. Any comments or questions on that? Rob.
Thanks, Claire. I have a couple of thoughts and observations, I guess, based on some of the comments that were made at the meeting. I think it was on October the 4th. And additionally, I mean, I think that there was some concern about potential human rights issues if we target a specific area of the city, especially if that area of the city happens to be composed of a specific minority of people. And so I think that that was something that really wasn't considered. But I think it's important. And some of the comments that were made by members of the public at the meeting are what I view as unconscious racism on display. So people refer to maintaining the small town feel. And there have been instances where I've been able to get into it and unpack that statement with folks who have made it. And ultimately, I don't have a large sample size. I've unpacked this with 2 people who made this comment and then allowed me to unpack it with them and were open enough to get there with me. Both of those instances, it ultimately came down to small town feel means everybody looks the same. Please let me, there's a few other examples that I want to discuss, and then we have an item on the agenda about priorities and work plan for the future of this committee. And I think addressing the unconscious racism within this community should be a priority for this committee. I strongly believe that is one thing that this committee can achieve because we're right smack dab in the middle of it. And we have the membership, and hopefully we can get the buy-in from the membership of this committee to take this on as a priority for 2022, because it is there. There's the increased rentals in an area that already has lots of rentals and subsidized housing. What can we do in support of preserving our neighborhood? Our land and neighborhood is not for sale. the character of well-established neighborhoods, the private residential homes, and the quality of life enjoyed by generations of families are at risk. These are all statements that are problematic at their core. And unfortunately, it's so historically prevalent within this community that it's unseen and it's unheard by people who look like us in this meeting. Because we've lived here for so long, we've become so used to hearing these statements, and we don't internalize how somebody who doesn't look like us hears these types of statements. And I have had some wonderful consultation with members of our community who are newcomers, not only to Barrie, but also to the country. And let me tell you, Claire, they hear these comments for what they are, and it hurts. It hurts.
Yeah, I just wanted to just put you on pause for a sec. I think what you're referring to is the discussion around the third suites, if you will, or the accessory suites in the backyards.
There was a lot of crossover. Yes, it was that meeting.
You're right. There is some crossover. I'm not sure that I heard that with the absentee landlord discussion to that extent, because the absentee landlord was much more focused on the whole issue of landlords. And you're right. And the pilot program was in the Georgian College area simply because that's probably the area where we have the most concentration of absentee landlords. I think the other part of the discussion that I would say, and I'm very open to having the discussion that you're suggesting, and we can certainly tackle that during our, what are we going to do next year kind of thing, because I do think you're absolutely right on. We do hear a lot of sort of stereotype kinds of things that are sort of spoken using other language. And I think you're right. That's the kind of thing that divides the community and damages people that are from outside of the city or outside of the country even. And certainly I think, and all you have to go do is knock on 10,000 doors when you're campaigning. And one of the things that you hear so often is, I've lived here for 30 years, or I've lived here for 50 years. And I think that kind of thing does say, I've lived here this long, that gives me rights to say who shouldn't live here. And that, and that's a problem, absolutely. So can we pick that piece up, Rob? A little further down the meeting? Okay. All right. Anything else on the absentee landlord piece? Let's see where it goes. Okay, Judy? For some reason or other, I can't hear what you're saying. I can't even read lips or body language that well, but there's something going on there. You must have something with your speakers or something. Anyway, Judy, we'll come back to you. Anything else on the absentee landlord? All right. Todd.
Sorry, I had a quick question.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of the new enforcement officers that are being onboarded for part of that part of the solution, is that mostly going to be reactionary, they receive calls and they go out, or is there any plans to do any sort of proactive outreach? And maybe it's my lack of knowledge in the area as well, if that's currently already partaking. So I apologize for that if it's already going on too, but.
No, you don't need to apologize. The motion that was passed uses the word proactive. So I think the intention is to move it from a complaints-driven system to a proactive approach. Yeah, I guess, first of all, there's another hurdle that has to happen, and that is it needs to be approved as an intake form in the budget. So there's dollars attached to it, of course. So that's the next step, and that'll happen between now and the end of the year. And then I guess there's a ramp up period, of course, if that gets approved at the budget. So that's sort of the state of the art. But it is, the motion did say proactive, so we'll see how that works. All right, anything else on the absentee landlord item? All right, Georgian College updates. I see Todd is on the call. Are you able to do that? I don't see Brian anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not seeing Brian on there, so I won't be able to provide as much detail as Brian, but to tell you know, so the college is currently operating with about 30% of their classes being held on campus itself, and that is expected to increase to 90% come winter semester. So the college is basically getting back to more normal operations come January. I know Brian does have the details and information around the orientation, which will be starting at the beginning of January. But overall, we're still currently to come on the campus, we're required, there is a vaccine mandate on the property. So if you are to attend, proof of vaccination is required, and that's required for all students, staff, faculty, and visitors. And that will continue into January as well. And at each access point that we have on the college, so currently not all of the access points are open, but the ones that are, when you go through, you'll be met by a campus ambassador who will provide you with a level 1 mask to come on the property, and proof of vaccination is required at that point, and that will continue through to January as well when we start with 90% return.
All right. Are you, how is the housing question at the college? Are you getting any feedback about, you know, there's lots of housing, rents are coming down, or there's not enough housing, or what's happening with that, or have you heard anything?
In my area, unfortunately, I haven't heard anything, Claire, so I'm not able to comment on that.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Todd. Any questions for Todd or comments? I think one of the things that I was hoping to chat about is the January orientation and how we might get involved, or how that, any suggestions along that, or is that something that we should try to work out with the college during the course?
So I can't provide specifics, but what I can do, Claire, is I can take that away and have a conversation with Brian to let him know that you are interested in doing that. And then maybe we can have him reach back out to you to let you know what options are available for that.
Sure. I know that, and this is maybe for Rob, I know that BHA was involved in the orientation before COVID. I think there were some clothes and things like that they were working on. And they also did sort of a, I don't know what they call it, but a mentoring or connection program. And we connected, Judy and I connected with, you know, a couple of students and had them over for dinner and had a great time with them, actually. Is BHA thinking along those lines at all, Rob, or do you know?
I don't know, but I can definitely have some conversations and report back in November.
Sure. Okay. All right. That'd be great. And Judy, you're back up and running. Good. All right. Thank you. Welcome.
Can we just test to make sure you can hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. So that's
I'm
good.
on a shared workstation at work, so the settings always get changed. And anyways, nice to see everybody.
Yeah, you're good. All right. So that brings us then the next item to work plan priorities. And the last time we talked, we were going to explore snow angels, and my mind is leaving me. What else did we? There was something else.
The yard sale.
Oh yeah, right. Some sort of renew the connecting the city recycling folks with the College. And that one, I know we did make that connection because I sent some emails to Brian. I haven't heard anything more beyond that. Todd, do you know anything about that?
No, I don't.
I think the answer is no. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know where that went. The Snow Angels, I'm struggling with that a little bit. The city no longer has, is not involved with Snow Angels anymore. But they did have a name and an email, and I emailed the person, but I didn't get anything back. So I don't know whether that program is active or not. Anybody else know anything about it?
I do have them coming in to speak with the Seniors Advisory Committee. So if you want, I can try and reach out to get them to reach out to you. And maybe we can get something set up that way as well.
Okay. Would you mind doing that? Appreciate that, Brandy. Okay. All right. And then Rob wanted to raise this whole question of racism, systemic racism in our community, and how we should maybe sort of think about that and do some work around that in the coming year. Rob, do you want to take the floor on that?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, I guess first of all, I'd like to know if there's support from the group to begin this type of a conversation. And then I guess if that's supported by the group, I really think that we need to bring some people into the conversation who don't look like us. Otherwise, I don't think the conversation is even worth having. So I think that that's got to be a first start. But I do believe that by beginning to have some of these difficult and uncomfortable conversations, we can perhaps make a change that is extremely important, especially as our community is changing in front of our eyes in real time. And I think that we need to accept that, and some people need to admit that to themselves and recognize that that's the reality, and it's going to be the reality for the foreseeable future.
Judy.
I applaud Rob for bringing this up. It is such a necessary conversation, and it's a really tough one because we're actually talking about getting at the root of these issues. And it's not going to come as a surprise to anybody that I think that we need students on this committee, and especially international students. I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately, last week, and then watching it on YouTube later, it just hit home so obviously that this is a group talking about student life and student issues in part, without any participation from the student body itself. And I so appreciated Jake last week bringing up the relevancy of the committee and talking about where we go from here. I actually found it to be maybe one of the better conversations started in this group. And in this last year, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to just hit the gas pedal and not look back. I'd like to maybe have some, I'm not the coordinator brain, but I brought this up before, and I think what might be worth considering is the makeup of this group. What's the scope going forward, and then how do we open up positions that reflect that scope, rather than having people come into the exact same space and then try and work with new priorities. We need to have some kind of transfer, whether it's everybody in this group or there's a whole new body who's going to, reset their agenda. So, and then maybe we do consider having formal positions for students and a GCSA rep, and maybe we focus on our priorities, one of them including student inclusion as well as anti-racism, and those are separate. And then we've got, and also I have a question. If this is an advisory committee, where's the opportunity for us to advise the city? So I'm just throwing out, that's like Jake said last week, that was a dump of thoughts, and this is the discussion I think we really need to have. And it's actually the reason that I joined this committee 3 years ago. So for me to feel satisfied that it was a worthwhile, project and collaboration, I'd really like us to put some energy into that this year. So yes, Rob, full support. Thank you for bringing that up.
All right, Jake.
So, I mean, it's clear that, racism stems from a lack of knowledge, right? You think of somebody who, I read a book, Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad or Said, I'm going to mess up her name. And in that book, she talks about how people don't associate themselves as racist because when you think of a racist, you think of that group, that fringe group that's on the outskirts of society that really is like the KKK, who are blatantly racist in their beliefs and their systems. But racism also, as we know and understand, lives at that subconscious level and comes out in many different forms in terms of the statements that have been mentioned earlier by both you, Claire, and you, Rob. We know that it comes out through microaggressions and so forth. And the problem is when we have people who have been living here for 30 or 40 years, when they're not given that opportunity to educate themselves or don't have those opportunities to become more enlightened because they're not going to be proactively outreaching because they don't necessarily think that they're racist in their beliefs. Or they might not have the opportunity through different venues, through work, through education, through many different institutions, churches, whatever collective groups that they belong to, those groups might not offer those specific opportunities for them to kind of take a step back and reflect on how they may have unintentionally contributed to a racist culture. So my question is, I know, so I sit on the EDI committee here at the college, and one of the things we're working on with our new EDI director, Sula Levesque, coming in is an EDI website where we are going to kind of compile a list of different resources, books, podcasts, organizations, clubs, so forth, so that we can have folks from around the communities, in all of the communities that the college touches, in order to kind of give them, hey, you're in this area, these are some resources that can help you along your journey. And I know that's one thing that we can create, but the problem is connecting the community to those resources, and then wondering from a city perspective, is there anything that the city has on their website that also can support people throughout that learning journey? How do we, and then the biggest gap is, how do we connect them?
All right, Rob.
I would just in response to Jake, I mean, I think that's exactly what we as a committee could do, is that we could endeavor to work with Access Barrie to create that page on the city website that probably does not yet exist. And then working with the committee and Access Barrie and your EDI group at the college, I'm sure that we could coordinate on language and messaging and have that be consistent. And that could be an outcome. And further to that, Judy, you're asking about how we provide recommendations to council. We as a committee are more than open to pass motions forward that would then go to the reference committee, which this committee reports to, and then would go to general committee and council. So that's how we make recommendations to councils. We would put forth a motion, and if carried successfully, it moves up the chain. So that's how the process works.
Yeah, and for sure, I mean, we could pass motion. We could take a look at the composition of the town and gown committee as well, and say, we think that the composition should be changed, because I think that's maybe something right off the top that we should be thinking about. Okay. Any more discussion? Where do we want to go from here? It seems to me that there's probably some next steps that we should talk about in terms of how we actually accomplish these conversations. I think Rob's suggestion about getting together with Access Barrie and working out something on the website, because frankly, I mean, Town and Gown does not have a web page that's connected to the city webpage at all. We have no electronic presence as a committee. I don't even know whether that city would smile on that or not, but there's certainly, you know, that's, I think, a pretty straightforward thing to be doing. I wonder if we shouldn't be, you know, inviting the EDI group to meet with us next time. That might be a start. Rob, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I was going to suggest perhaps for our November meeting, if we could consider having Access Barrie and maybe somebody from the EDI group at the college, maybe the new director, to join us. We could potentially discuss a communications and outreach strategy that could launch maybe in late December, leading into the January welcoming of, you know, 90% student body back to the college. That might not be enough time, but there might be enough time. You know, it would give us about 6 weeks or, you know, 4 to 6 weeks of time to develop some common messaging. The college very likely have some messaging that the city could probably adapt. So maybe that would be a step forward, to have both groups at our November meeting and see if we could come up with something that could go out in conjunction with the new student body coming in January.
I think that's a great suggestion. Judy.
Oh, thank you. I thank you, Rob, for explaining Access Barrie a little bit more in how it would relate to an advisory group. Sorry, no, I just lost my thought. I had so many. Thank you, everybody. You're having my mind go off on so many tangents. It's too bad Brian's not here. Brian, I'm sure you're watching later, so hi. Would love to connect with you about the possibility of opening up to discuss the co-curricular record that you brought up last meeting, and see if there's any room in there for leadership roles that could contribute to this committee. And I'm gonna have to wait on it. I lost my thought. My apologies.
It'll come back. And I can remind you, I can welcome you to the seniors moments that happen as you get more and more white hair. All right. Do we want to think about the composition of this committee? Because you know, history causes inertia in some ways, because, you know, originally this committee is an advisory committee to council, but it's also a committee that kind of works together with the college and the community, and that's why it's kind of maybe more of a, I don't know, bureaucratic, if you will, kind of group that tries to solve these kind of problems. And the problems always have been kind of housing and parties and some of those things, as opposed to some of the real systemic things that I think we do need to deal with. So I think the role of the committee is changing, and I sit on the Town and Gown Association of Ontario, and I think we're probably this would be a new step for any of the Town and Gown associations that are scattered around Ontario. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't take a leadership role in this, or, you know, move something along. Absolutely. All right. Judy.
Back. Yes, it's in thinking about Access Barrie and how Town and Gown might function. I mean, being a behind the scenes group is just fine. And I also was resonating with Jake's comments from last month about like your move-in day experience and just kind of the things you didn't know or didn't know you needed to know. The city of Barrie really has space to promote itself in meaningful ways to the college community. Like, students come and they know Georgian College, but what's after Georgian College, or what makes you feel like the city did something? So say it was the waste strategy, brought to you by the city of Barrie. And here or some links. But if we could utilize Access Barrie and have more conversations like the one that Claire brought up with absentee landlords. So kudos to you. I know that didn't go through, but you started a very important conversation. And if we could start conversations that include the college relationship and the students within it, that ties in with housing, ties in with racism, but also shows that the city is really wants to support the college community, because ultimately we want those students to participate in our activities. I saw the report that came out from Unlock Democracy Canada, Canada. And, there's a lot of room for improvement. And how do we start getting participation from the groups that we really need to? Start early. Start when they are first arriving and they actually don't even know what the city of Barrie is. So, students in general, like younger people, don't really know what their city does. And then especially if you're coming from another country, like the idea of having a council and having a city who provides services might not be anything like where the students come from. So it's a learning opportunity for civic engagement and down the road democratic participation in our city. But we can't just be thinking, we're going to reach out to these groups and say, please apply for a position that you don't really understand from the roots. So if you come to Barrie and you come to Canada and your first impression includes this sense of actual community and city life and civic participation and social norms, as a loose term, I think that we can enhance that. I think the city of Barrie really needs to put itself out there with logo and also with, where needed, people support, people resources. But it's fine. Town and Gown doesn't maybe need to have a page, because that just kind of muddies the water. We can just be really pushing from behind the scenes between Barrie and the college. My thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't think we need a very visible presence at all. I think we just need to be sort of the grease that makes the machinery work. And I think probably a really good step is to have Access Barrie and the EDI group with us next meeting, and let's see what kind of things we can get brainstormed there. Jake, is that reasonable to expect we could get some EDI representation?
Yeah, I can. Our next meeting is this Thursday, but I'm in a board retreat all day, so I'm not able to attend. But I can email our chair is Leanne Jackson, and then Sula is still new to the college, so I know she's got a lot of heavy priorities right now. So I'll loop them both in and see if either or both are available for the next meeting, and I'll CC you on that as well, so that we can do some introductions too.
That would be terrific, and then Brandy can line up Access Barrie, and between now and our next meeting, we can pull that together, and hopefully even they could have some discussions between themselves before our meeting, because if we can get some dialogue going, then they can come to us and much better prepared, and we can move along a lot farther. Okay. Any further discussion on this topic? Good. I think we can, I'm very glad with that. I think we can move something forward. Let's hope we can anyway. All right. We had the update from Todd. Any comments from city reps at this point? Jeff, you want to start us off on traffic?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Yeah, there's some exciting things going on. We recently installed our first permanent speed cushion there on Cotterton within Ward 1. And we're looking to go on November 1st with our second one on Cheltenham. So we just got word this morning that the contractor's going to be immobilizing on Monday. So staff are eagerly running out and notifying those area residents that will be I guess impacted is the word. So that was why I had to jump out there before the meeting started. But so that's exciting. And then our temporary speed cushions will be being removed on the week of November 1st as well. So lots of traffic calming activities going on. So always fun. That's pretty much the high level stuff. We are looking at moving the speed boards around again across the city. So be looking for an email from Michelle, looking for some more locations from yourself, Claire.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll get those moved in the next 6 to 8 weeks.
No shortage on that request for speed control everywhere in the ward.
Right, for sure.
All right. Any questions or comments for Jeff? Okay, Michael, you're gonna get a whole host of colleagues next year. At least we're hoping.
Potentially, yeah, we'll see. But not much of an update from me. I will give you a bit of a kind of a statistical update since our last meeting last month. So since our last meeting, there's been just for zoning complaints, there's been 72 of them. That's citywide. 36 of those have been in the East End, so about half of those. Of those 36, about 30% have been for boarding, lodging, rooming houses, 25% for second suites, another 25% for vehicles being stored on landscaped areas of the lots. The remainder have been just some other interior, exterior issues, which we don't often talk about in this meeting. What I'm going to try to do for the next meeting is give you a bit more of an idea of the year of 2021 and what the East End has looked like for the year in its entirety. I know that it's not necessarily the end of the year yet, but I think it might be at least the last meeting that I'll be attending for this year. So I'll try to give you a bit more of a broad update during the next meeting for that.
And just to be clear, the 72 were citywide. Is that for all of this year, or?
That's that's just since our last meeting, which was I think September 22nd. It's I think the number of complaints citywide, at least so far, we're about 800, I think, specifically for zoning.
Okay, all right. And when you say half of them are in the East End, mostly in the Georgian College area, or spread
mostly out? No, when I say East End, just the way that my system works, that's essentially everything east of Bayfield Street. But I can tell you, because I'm the person who does every single zoning complaint in that area, that most of those are in what I consider the college area, which is everything east of St. Vincent and north of Steele. Some are a little bit outside of that, but pretty much in that area is where most of those are.
All right. And those are the complaints. How many of these complaints are resolved?
So, I mean, it really depends. So I resolve complaints that have been open for longer since our last meeting, because often with issues for housing, like rooming houses and secondary suites, for me to get compliance, there's either a permit process that people go through, or it is an eviction process that they go through. And whichever process they choose to go through, that takes some time. Whether that is, if we're going through a building permit process, obviously there's people that need to hire, there's drawings need to do, and there's a review process from the city, as well as construction that needs to take place. And if they choose to not go through a permit and they choose to evict tenants that are in their houses, there's provincial processes in place for that, as well as these tenants' right to dispute that eviction as well. So sometimes it takes longer, but I'm usually resolving as many complaints as I'm getting.
Oh, all right.
Michael, I had a question about the nature of the complaints.
Sure.
Maybe it's been a while since you've updated about that, but when you say like second suite complaints, like what does that mean, and how might it relate specifically to like the college area or students?
So second suites are not just specific to the college area. These are things that we deal with citywide. And what I mean by complaint is that somebody, whether that's a member of the public or someone who lives in one of these units, complains to the city about the fact that there is really a second dwelling unit within a building, that has not, or they don't think has been registered with the municipality and has not been built with the benefit of a building permit. So what we do, not just myself, but our building department as well, we will investigate that complaint, go to these properties and see if there is any merit to that complaint. And if there is, we'll deal with that accordingly based on one of those two routes that I mentioned before.
Thanks. And where does overcrowding fit into bylaw? Like, is that why people, they're calling because they're saying too many people live here, or are they using like, it's a word I think we need to embrace a little bit more rather than saying absentee landlords. Like, we're kind of moving away from that discussion, but there's still a major issue with overcrowding, mostly due to supply issues. But how does that fit in with bylaw?
So we don't necessarily use the word overcrowding, but there is, that is an aspect of what we deal with. So that would be more so along the lines of what we call boarding, lodging, rooming houses. Now, the province through the building code has really a threshold for the amount of lodgers that can be in a dwelling unit. And the building code sets that number at 4. So if you have more than 4 lodgers within a unit, that unit would be considered a boarding, lodging, rooming house. It would need to meet the safety standards for that. And municipally, we have other measures for rooming houses, like an annual license you need to obtain, and as well as some planning regulations for where they can be, and even going a little bit further as to the amount of lodgers that you're allowed to have in these units. But so we do deal with overcrowding. However, depending on the amount of lodgers that are in a unit, sometimes all of those people can stay as long as there's compliance achieved with a permit and a license, but sometimes it's not a possibility based on the number of people that are there. So overcrowding is something that we do typically deal with, but we kind of classify that as illegal rooming houses. Does that kind of answer your question? Do you have any questions about what I said? I'm sure somebody does.
All right, any questions or comments for Michael? I don't envy your job, Michael. I think you, and when I talk to people in the neighborhood, I think your next posting should be diplomat to some country somewhere, because you apparently do that very nicely. Stepping on toes and making people say thank you is a tough job. All right. Any other things that you'd like to discuss at this point? Okay. What we'll do is we'll put Brandy and Jake to work to get Access Barrie and EDI pulled together between now and the next meeting, and that'll be the sort of the main topic of our next meeting, I think. Let's see where that goes. All right. Anything else that we need to deal with today? Okay, if not, thank you very much, and we'll see you in a month. Have a good day.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
you.
Bye.